Imagine standing in the center of Seoul. It is July 1762. The summer heat is absolutely suffocating, the kind of heat that makes the air feel heavy in your lungs. In the middle of the courtyard of the Changnyeonggung Palace, there sits a wooden box, a rice chest. It is sealed tight. There are no openings, no light. But if you were to step closer and press your ear against the thick, rough wood, you would hear sounds that would haunt you for the rest of your life. You would hear fingernails desperately clawing against the timber. You would hear a voice, hoarse and broken, begging for a single drop of water. And most terrifying of all, you would hear a son begging his own father to simply kill him with a sword, rather than let him rot in this dark, cramping hell. The man inside that box is not a common criminal. He is Crown Prince Sado, the heir to the throne of the Joseon Dynasty. And the man who put him there is his father, King Yeongjo. How does a glorious dynasty end up here? Why would a father choose the most agonizing execution method imaginable for his own flesh and blood? To understand this evil, we must go back to a time when the monster inside the box was still an angel. Prince Sado was not born mad. In fact, he was supposed to be the savior of the kingdom. When Sado was born, King Yeongjo wept with joy. The boy was a prodigy. By age 2, he could write Chinese characters. By age 3, he had memorized complex ancient poems. The court hailed him as a future sage king. But his father, King Yeongjo, was not a normal parent. He was a perfectionist, a man obsessed with the legitimacy of his rule. He didn't just want a good son. He demanded a flawless God. From the moment Sado could walk, the king separated him from his mother. He was raised in a distant palace, surrounded only by cold eunuchs and strict nannies. Every day became a psychological torture test. By the time Sado was 10, visiting his father was a nightmare.
If Sado answered a question too slowly, he was called an idiot. If he answered too quickly, he was called reckless. The king even developed a disturbing ritual called washing his ears. Whenever Sado said something the king didn't like, the king would literally wash his ears with water and change his clothes, as if the mere words of his son were filth that contaminated him. This pressure didn't create a diamond. It created a crack. As Sado entered puberty, the brilliance faded, replaced by the first signs of instability. He began to fear thunder. He developed a phobia of the sky itself. And most strangely, he developed vestophobia, a terror of clothing. Sado believed his clothes were cursed. Every morning, getting dressed became a violent battle. He would shred his royal robes, scream until his throat bled, and beat his servants if they offered him the wrong garment. The prince's palace, once a beacon of hope, began to darken. Whispers of the crown prince's madness began to spread through the court. But no one, not even the king, could have predicted that these tantrums were just the beginning. The monster inside Sado was waking up, and it was thirsty for blood. The madness didn't stop at tearing clothes. In 1757, when Sado was 22 years old, the final moral line was crossed. One night, a eunuch made a minor mistake while serving medicine. In a blind, uncontrollable rage, Sado drew his sword. It was the first time the blood of an innocent stained the palace floor at the hands of the prince.
That kill didn't scare Sado. It relieved him. It was a drug that silenced the voices in his head. From that moment on, the Eastern Palace became a slaughterhouse. We know this because of the heartbreaking memoirs written by his wife, Lady Yeongjo. She described scenes that sound like fiction. Sado began killing on a whim. Eunuchs, court ladies, servants, anyone who crossed his path during an episode could be next.
There were days when Sado would wander the halls with a blood-soaked sword. Once, he walked into his wife's chambers holding the severed head of a eunuch. He threw it onto the floor, forcing his wife and her ladies to stare into the dead man's eyes to build their courage. Historians estimate Sado killed over 100 people within the palace walls. Bodies were secretly carried out through small gates at night to hide the carnage from the king. But the madness wasn't just violent, it was perverse. Sado smuggled in shamans, nuns, and courtesans for days of debauchery. He built a small shrine underground, practicing strange black magic rituals to appease the demons in his mind. His wife lived in a personal hell. She hid her bruises. She stayed silent as her husband murdered, all to protect their young son, the king's grandson, from his father's rage. She knew that one wrong word could end with her own death. But the secret couldn't be kept forever. In the summer of 1762, a terrifying rumor reached King Yeongjo. Sado was no longer just killing servants. In his delusion, he was planning to kill the king himself. King Yeongjo was now 68. He realized the son he once loved was gone. In his place was a threat to the entire dynasty. If Sado took the throne, the country would drown in blood. But the king had a problem. Royal law forbade the execution of a crown prince. He could not be beheaded like a common criminal. It would stain the royal bloodline. The king needed a solution. He needed a way to kill his son without killing him. And so, he thought of the rice chest. July 4th, 1762. Destiny arrived. The king summoned Sado to the courtyard. But this time there were no lectures. The king threw a sword onto the dirt and gave a cold command: commit suicide. Sado, in a rare moment of clarity, fell to his knees. He slammed his forehead against the ground until it bled, begging for his life. He tried to hang himself with his belt, but his own servants stopped him. The king was impatient. He didn't want a quick death. He ordered the rice chest to be brought out. It was a square wooden box, roughly 4 feet by 4 feet. Too small for a grown man to lie down, too low to stand up. It wasn't a prison, it was a coffin. Sado was forced inside. The heavy lid slammed shut. The lock clicked. And then, the king ordered his men to hammer nails into the rim, cover it with grass to block the air, and place heavy stones on top. The nightmare truly began. Day 1. Sado screamed for hours. He kicked the wood until the palace shook. He begged his father. He begged for water. The July heat turned that box into an oven. The air inside was thin, hot, and stale. By day 3, the screaming stopped, replaced by the sound of fingernails scratching against the wood. Historical records suggest that in his extreme thirst, Sado was forced to drink his own urine and chew on his own clothes just to find moisture. Outside the box, life went on. The king continued his duties, ate his meals, and slept, while his son lay dying just a few yards away. At night,
The prince's low moans haunted the palace guards, forcing them to cover their ears. Day 7. Silence. No more scratching, no more begging. Only the smell of death began to seep through the cracks of the wood. On day 8, King Yeongjo ordered the chest to be opened. The sight was horrific. Crown Prince Sado was found curled in a fetal position. His fingernails were broken and embedded in the wood. His body was twisted, starved, and dehydrated. The man who was once the hope of an empire was gone. He didn't die by the sword. He died of starvation, heat, and madness, killed by the silence of his own father. Sado died, but the trauma didn't end there. Watching from the shadows was Sado's young son, Yeongjo. That little boy witnessed the entire week of torture. He grew up carrying that horror in his heart, eventually becoming one of Korea's greatest kings,
spending his entire life trying to clear his father's name. The story of Prince Sado is more than just history. It is a warning. It is a tragedy of a child crushed by expectation, a human turned into a monster by a loveless family. And if you listen closely to the history of the Joseon Dynasty, you can still hear the scratching inside that wooden box.